So somebody recently asked me on the channel, Rob, if you look back to your first Camino, what would you do differently? What have you learnt along the way? Good question, coming right up. So if you're new to the channel, I'm by no means a Camino expert, and I haven't walked dozens of Caminos like some people, but I walked my first Camino in 2015, which was the Camino Frances from Saint-Jean. I've walked the Frances 3 times, and I've walked 3 other routes, the Via de la Plata, the Camino Invierno, and the out to Finisterre and Mochia. So, and I'm a Camino tragic, so I live and breathe the Camino. What would I do differently? I think that's a really great question, and I kind of reflected on that question a little bit and thought, I'm not sure I would do anything differently. Excuse me. But then I thought there are some things. So let me put some context around this. The reason I walked my first Camino was I saw the movie The Way. As soon as I watched it, I turned to Pat, my wife, and said, we have to walk that. I just felt absolutely drawn to it. It was a sort of time in my life where I suppose I was wondering, you know, about purpose and all that kind of stuff and meaning of life. And it was really kind of what I felt I needed to do at the time. And I went nuts on researching it. If you are on EVA's forum and have been on there for a while, you might recall back in 2014, I was asking all sorts of dumb questions. I researched the Camino inside and out. I was just absolutely obsessed with it, with the gear and the route and all the rest of it. So I was probably over-prepared. But I'll explain that in a minute. But if I was to do things differently, looking back on that first Camino 10 years ago, kind of what have I learnt along the way, what would I do differently? Number one would be relax. And I think with that, really have no expectations. And I don't think I did on my first one. I kind of had learnt that through all the research that I'd done. You know, don't turn up expecting too much or anything specific. And I've mentioned on the channel a few times that I kind of wanted to find answers on that very first Camino. I realised in the first week I didn't even know what the question was. So I was pretty relaxed, but I think I should have been more relaxed in the lead up to it and not so obsessed about, you know, the route and the gear and all the rest of it. You know, you really can just turn up and walk it. But, you know, if you're like me, you enjoy the whole planning process. So number one, relax. Number two, pack less, I'm sure. Have you walked multiple Caminos? Do comment down below. Did you carry too much on your first one? I think most people do. What is it they say? We pack our fears, and absolutely that's true. I had way too much stuff. The stuff I took was the right stuff. It's still the stuff that I'm using now. I just had too much of it. You know, I had too many pairs of socks. I had too many changes of shirts and things like that. And that was a burden, you know, on that first Camino. But because, you know, on the flip side, because I'd kind of researched the whole thing a lot, I actually was very happy with the gear. And a lot of the gear I still use. You know, my hiking pants are the same ones. I was going to say the shirts are the same, but they wore out, but they're similar ones. My rain gear I've only just replaced. My pack is the same as it was in 2015. So I think the lesson there is probably be very careful about the gear that you're picking, because I actually wasted a lot of money buying the wrong gear. Excuse me. We bought backpacks that we got rid of during training. We bought clothing that we got rid of during training. You know, we turned up with a credit card at this outdoor supply store and just went nuts and kind of bought the wrong stuff, which we replaced prior to the first Camino. So yeah, pack less and make sure if you're buying gear that you're buying the stuff that you really want. Research it, make sure that it's suitable for purpose. Number three, this is a very personal thing. What would I do differently? Lose weight. I don't mean pack weight, I mean body weight. I've probably since my 30s always had a bit of a weight problem. You know, I'm not big boned, it's nothing like that. I enjoy eating and drinking too much, it's quite simple. And I've always had a little bit of a problem with weight. And I kind of fooled myself that I would get fit and lose weight prior to that first Camino, and I didn't. I think I was down to 92 kilos or something, and I'm only 5'7", so I'm a bit of a chubby pilgrim. That made that first Camino very difficult, very difficult. I was injured in training, I think probably because of my body weight. So I was carrying injuries from day one, and it just got worse. Don't get me wrong, that first Camino was everything I had hoped for, but it was painful all the way. And I just kind of lived on painkillers. What would I do differently? Lose weight. And so if you've been on the channel for a while, you know that my weight actually went up to just over 100 kilos at one point, and I got down to, I think prior to my last Camino, about 83. Oh, it just felt so different. I felt I could skip along the Camino. Again, because of my love of food and wine, it's gone up a little bit more since. But for my next Camino, I really want to get under 80. I would love to get to 75. Oh, I'd be skipping along the trail. So body weight, yeah, you know, if you have a challenge with body weight like me, you know, bite the bullet. I'll put a link up here. Hey, I am no medical professional. I'm no nutritionist. All the caveats, but what I have found works really well for me if I want to lose body weight is intermittent fasting. So I'll put a link up there. Do get your own medical advice, all that stuff. But I found that it really works for me. So I will definitely be losing more weight for the next time. I loved being lighter. I want to be lighter yet. Just a note, I had a note there actually just on the gear. Have I changed any of the gear since the first Camino? The only thing significant that I've changed, I used to wear Gore-Tex boots. I now wear trail runners. I now wear Hoka Stinsons. The only reason I changed, I love the boots and I loved the Gore-Tex. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I loved having dry feet in the rain. The only reason I changed my footwear was that even though they're lightweight boots, they were a little bit heavy and they were causing I have knee issues, arthritis and bursitis and things like that. And the weight of the boots was making that worse. And so a couple of podiatrists said, lose the boots, get lightweight trail runners, and that's what I've done. So they're not Gore-Tex, I miss the Gore-Tex. So gear, pretty much the same. So what have we got? Relax, don't overplan, pack less, lose body weight, train. Easier said than done for someone like me. I kind of fool myself and get around training. I do a little bit of training. I mean, Pat and I are lucky that we live near a nice park and there's a lake and we can walk around the lake. It's only like a 4K circuit. But coming up to a Camino, we'll do that 2 or 3 times a week. It's hardly any training at all. And I kind of fool myself and I get around the whole training thing by easing into the Camino. So what I've always done is to start out slow and short. So, you know, day one might be 10 Ks, and then I build up 12 Ks, 14 Ks, 16 Ks, 18 Ks. That's kind of how I fool myself that I can get away without training. In reality, it would be much better to do some training. You know, I find it takes a couple of weeks on Camino before my leg strength really builds. It would make sense to do that before you go, Rob. You know, so training is something I'm still coming to grips with and that I need to do more of. Probably number 5, what would I do differently? Slow down. This is a mindset thing, and I do that now. So I slow down. I'm not in any rush. I plan enough time that I can do fairly short stages, you know, 20 to 25 Ks. Closer to 20 is my sweet spot. I walk slowly. I like to stroll along. You know, I'm not striding out. I want to absorb everything around me. I stop lots. It drives Pat nuts. You know, once she gets walking, she just wants to keep going. Come to a hill, she wants to keep going. I want to stop. I want to listen to the birds. I want to, you know, look at the trees. I want to listen to the wind in the trees. It's a really slow journey for me. And I don't think I was particularly quick on the first one, but I've become much more conscious in subsequent Caminos of just slowing down and enjoying the journey. That can be difficult at times. So if you're planning your first Camino, that can be a little bit difficult at times, particularly when you meet people. So on the more popular Caminos, like the Frances and the Portuguese, you're going to meet people, you're going to make friends. You know, people say the Camino is a bit like speed dating on steroids. It is, you know. You'll meet someone on the trail and like within 2 minutes you're spilling your guts about your life and challenges and things like that, and you kind of want to bond with these people and stay with these people. It's a challenge, because if you want to walk slower than they do, you're trying to keep up, you're going to get injured trying to keep up with them. It's a real tough one. I'd say it's just something to be aware of. And you might have to let some people go that you want to spend time with, but keeping up with them doesn't make a lot of sense for you, you know, because you're going to struggle physically, emotionally, or whatever, trying to keep up with them. So slowing down can be difficult when everyone else is going quicker than you. So there we go. Some things that I now do differently, some things that I need to try to do differently, particularly training and stuff like that. What about you? If you've walked, you know, multiple Caminos, how did your subsequent Caminos differ from your first ones? I suppose actually I would add a number 6. What do I do differently? I avoid crowds. I love being alone on the path. And you know, my last Camino, the Via de la Plata, was glorious. I was just looking back the other day at, there's a video, I'll put it up here, first impressions and last impressions of the VDLP. And it was about the first few days and how I was enjoying the path. And there was no one else there. It was just me on the path. And I loved it. You know, I didn't see anybody from all day, just walking, and I loved that. So I think that's something that I have really come to love in relation to the Camino. And when I went from the VDLP to, I'll add another link, which was the best Camino, because otherwise I'll end up waffling and trying to explain all of this. So on my last Camino, I actually was on 4 different routes. So I'll put a link up here to explain the difference between them. But hitting the Camino Frances was just so different, so busy, and it was a bit overwhelming. And I suppose something that I do differently now that I really love is more remote Caminos. So I don't think I'd ever do a busy one again, because I've kind of learned to love the other side of Caminos, the solitude and that sort of walking meditation. I'm waffling, so time to finish. Love to hear from you if you've walked multiple Caminos. What do you do differently now? You know, if you've walked 10, 12, is it, you know, very much the same way? Have you changed anything? Have you changed your approach? Love to hear from you. If you are new to the channel, if you're new to Caminos, look in the description down below, and I've got a list down there of about 6 videos which I think are probably quite useful for newbie pilgrims. 6 of the most popular videos on the channel, things about, you know, gear and avoiding blisters and stuff like that. So have a look down below. But thanks for watching, and see you again next time. Bye for now.